If you want people to think you are, like, the smartest person in the room, the absolute worst thing you can do is actually try to prove it to them.
Right, yeah, it completely backfired.
It really does. In fact, if we look at the actual science of human perception, your best move is probably just to, stop talking entirely.
It's a brilliant paradox, honestly. We spend our entire lives trying to accumulate knowledge, just assuming that broadcasting that knowledge is how we earn respect.
Yeah.
But human beings do not evaluate intelligence based on the raw data you present. We evaluate it based on a highly flawed, deeply biased set of social signals.
Which is exactly what we're getting into today because, well, for anyone listening to this deep dive, you likely value actual fundamental understanding.
Absolutely.
You do the reading, you put in the hours, you care about the real substance of an idea. But today, we are exploring a slightly more devious, I guess, yet highly practical reality.
Devious is a good word for it.
Right. We are looking at this really incisive piece of writing titled 3 Ways to Appear Smarter Than You Are, which, for the record, actually provides 5 distinct strategies.
Right, 5 strategies plus a massive warning about artificial intelligence at the end.
Exactly. And the mission today is to explore the hidden science of intelligence, why our brains are so easily tricked by fake confidence, and the evidence-based strategies you can use to navigate a world that often, rewards style over substance. So, okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
Before we can even dive into the mechanics of, manipulating perception, we have to address the giant, awkward elephant in the room.
Yeah.
Why do we even care so much about intelligence? Or rather, why do we pretend not to care while secretly obsessing over it?
What's fascinating here is the sheer level of societal hypocrisy.
Oh, it's massive.
It really is. Intelligence, specifically raw cognitive ability, is arguably one of the most consequential human traits in existence, and yet it is incredibly socially awkward to discuss.
Yeah, I mean, if you bring up IQ at a dinner party,
you run a very high risk of being accused of elitism or, genetic determinism. It completely kills the vibe.
Totally, because publicly,
Yeah.
we want the playing field to feel completely level. We love to champion the traits that feel democratic.
Yeah.
The things we can supposedly control.
Exactly. We build entire corporate training modules around emotional intelligence.
We praise grit.
Right. We talk endlessly about resilience and authenticity.
But wait, I want to push back on that a little because the listener might be thinking, sure, IQ helps you pass a calculus exam, but the real world is about relationships. Are we saying emotional intelligence and grit just don't matter at all?
No. And to be clear, the source material does not claim those traits are useless.
Oh.
EQ dictates the friction of your daily interactions, yes. But privately, our behavior as a society tells a completely different story.
How so?
Well, the data the author presents is unyielding. Cognitive ability remains the single best predictor of educational attainment. And that holds true even when researchers heavily control for parental socioeconomic status.
Wow, really?
Yeah. Large-scale longitudinal studies consistently show that sheer processing power predicts academic progression and job performance across entirely different cultures. It does not dictate your capacity to solve highly complex, novel problems the way cognitive ability does.
Okay, so EQ is the oil in the engine, but cognitive ability is the actual horsepower.
That's a great way to put it. When researchers look at validity coefficients, which is basically just the mathematical score of how well one specific metric predicts a future outcome,
Right.
cognitive ability vastly outscores almost everything else.
Yeah.
It outperforms individual personality traits. It outperforms years of experience.
Wait, it outperforms experience.
Yes. It even outperforms structured employment interviews in most contexts.
That is wild.
And the critical mechanism here is complexity. The more complex the job, the stronger the predictive power of raw intelligence becomes.
So we are essentially running a massive societal PR campaign for grit, while our underlying algorithms are exclusively selecting for cognitive ability.
Basically, yes.
It's like people who loudly claim they don't care about fashion, but then only ever buy super expensive brand name clothes. Or like a tech company that advertises how much they value diverse life experiences, but their automated resume scanner instantly deletes anyone who doesn't have a computer science degree from an Ivy League school.
That is precisely the dynamic. We even engage in something called assortative mating, based on intelligence.
Meaning we inherently seek out partners in our same cognitive weight class.
Exactly. We actively partner with people of similar cognitive ability. And since we can't just hand out IQ tests on a first date,
Which would be a terrible first date.
horrible, we use elite university admissions, prestigious job titles, and specific credentials as proxies.
Right.
We use them as highly efficient shorthand for cognitive processing power, all while publicly claiming we reject the whole concept of measuring intelligence.
Which brings us to a massive evolutionary glitch. If we care this much about intelligence, if it dictates who we hire, who we marry, who we promote, you would assume human beings would have developed like a flawless, highly tuned radar for detecting it.
We really should have. But the reality is that unstructured human judgments of intelligence are incredibly noisy and heavily biased.
Yeah.
We are spectacularly bad at identifying true cognitive ability in the wild.
Because our brain's algorithm for detecting competence has been trained on terrible data, right? We don't have the time to actually test someone's processing speed in a meeting, so we rely on incredibly lazy visual and auditory heuristics.
Precisely. And those heuristics create a dangerous landscape of false positives and false negatives.
Okay, let's look at the false positives first.
So the most powerful illusion of competence is simple, unearned confidence. The author anchors this in the work of David Dunning and Justin Kruger.
The Dunning-Kruger effect. No, I feel like people throw that term around a lot just to describe someone they find annoying.
Right.
What is the actual mechanism at play there?
The mechanism is a fundamental lack of metacognition. Dunning and Kruger demonstrated that individuals with lower baseline ability in a specific domain do not possess the mental framework required to recognize their own incompetence.
Oh, wow.
It is a double penalty. They lack the skill, and because they lack the skill, they also lack the awareness to see that they are making mistakes.
So their brain essentially fills that void with absolute certainty.
Yes. And because our societal radar for intelligence is so poorly calibrated, we mistake that blind certainty for visionary leadership.
We do it constantly.
In organizational settings, assertiveness is an incredibly cheap signal to broadcast. Research on leadership emergence shows that traits like extroversion and the willingness to speak first and speak loudest heavily predict who gets elevated to management.
Even if they have no idea what they're talking about.
Exactly. This happens even when those traits have absolutely zero correlation with their actual performance metrics.
Here's where it gets really interesting. It's like a flashy, loud salesperson selling a complete lemon of a car, right? Versus a quiet, hesitant mechanic who actually knows how to fix it. The loud, flashy messages slide right past our brain's filter because they use the right buzzwords.
That is the perfect analogy.
Meanwhile, the highly nuanced, deeply researched ideas get flagged as spam because they look too complicated. Which leads us to the false negatives, the tragedy of the overlooked genius.
The highly intelligent individual is systematically flagged as spam by the corporate filter.
Why does that happen?
Because highly intelligent people process the world through a lens of complexity. They understand the variables. Therefore, their communication style naturally involves hedging.
Right, they see the gray areas.
Yes, they actively acknowledge uncertainty. They resist giving you a simple binary answer when the reality is a spectrum.
But the average observer doesn't hear complexity. They hear hesitation.
And hesitation is heavily penalized. Intellectual humility, which is the absolute hallmark of a brilliant scientific mind, is misinterpreted in a boardroom as weakness or ambiguity.
That is so frustrating.
The person who truly understands the problem is judged as less capable than the person who is simply too ignorant to see the risks.
That dynamic is terrifying, honestly, because it fundamentally skews how the listener's world operates. It means promotions frequently reward impression management over actual output.
Exactly. It reinforces inequality, too.
Right. It means substance is routinely beaten by style. So if substance is losing, perception becomes a critical currency.
It is a necessary survival skill. If you are navigating an environment where your audience, whether that is a hiring manager, a client, or a board of directors, lacks the technical expertise to judge your true ability, you have to learn how to manipulate the signals they're looking for.
We have to reverse engineer the spam filter.
Yes, we do.
The source breaks down how to curate a smarter reputation, not by being louder, but by weaponizing the very cognitive biases we just talked about. Let's walk the listener through these 5 evidence-based strategies, starting with, well, just the sheer volume of words we use.
Right. Strategy number 1, speak less, but say more.
Okay.
The instinct for most ambitious people is to over-explain. They want to show their work. They want to prove they have done the research by dumping a mountain of data onto the table.
Guilty. I definitely do that.
We all do. But the research on communication effectiveness shows that brevity is heavily correlated with perceived intelligence.
Because of cognitive load.
Yeah.
Right. If I am listening to you, my working memory only has so much space. If you give me a dense, tightly structured two-sentence answer, my brain processes that as highly refined, high-quality data.
Exactly. It signals that you possess the processing power to take a massive, chaotic subject, filter out the noise, and hand me only the essence.
Whereas verbosity signals the opposite. Rambling suggests you haven't actually organized your own thoughts yet.
You are making the listener do the analytical work for you. And closely tied to brevity is the actual vocabulary you choose, which is strategy number 2. Avoid unnecessary complexity.
Right. There's a classic psychological study by Daniel Oppenheimer about this.
Yes, Oppenheimer tested how people perceive intelligence based on vocabulary, and he found that actively trying to use complex, obscure words, essentially artificially inflating your language, makes you seem significantly less intelligent.
Haha. Wait. So to look smart, I shouldn't swallow a thesaurus.
No, do not swallow the thesaurus.
Why, though? Does it just make you sound pretentious?
It creates cognitive friction. When you use overly complex language where a simple word would do, the listener's brain has to work harder to decode the sentence.
Oh, I see.
Because the sentence is harder to process, it feels less fluent. And human beings strongly associate fluency with truth and competence. If your idea is hard to understand, our biased brains assume the idea itself is flawed, or that you don't really know what you're talking about.
But wait, if I just use incredibly simple language all the time, don't I run the risk of sounding totally entry-level? Like if I'm speaking to a room of engineers and I strip out all the technical jargon, they're going to think I have no idea how the system works.
That is a crucial distinction. The source emphasizes a rule of balance. You need domain-specific precision. You eliminate the fluffy, pretentious adjectives, but you deploy highly precise technical terms exactly when they are needed.
Okay, that makes sense.
Simplicity provides the structure, but precision acts as a targeted signal to the experts in the room that you belong in their tribe.
It is about finding the maximum impact with the minimum number of syllables.
Exactly.
Which brings us to strategy number 3. Ask better questions.
This is an incredibly elegant strategy. High-ability individuals naturally gravitate toward inquiry rather than recitation.
Right.
By asking a forward-looking diagnostic question, you completely bypass the need to prove your baseline knowledge. You are demonstrating metacognition.
You are showing how you think, rather than just reciting what you know. If someone presents a massive marketing plan, and instead of nitpicking the font choices, you ask, what underlying assumptions does this pricing model make about our competitors' supply chains?
You instantly elevate your status.
Yeah. You have framed yourself as the person looking at the structural integrity of the entire building, rather than just the paint color.
And notice how that kind of question naturally introduces strategy number 4.
Sure.
Display calibrated uncertainty.
Which feels completely counterintuitive. We just spent a significant amount of time establishing that the human brain falls for loud, absolute certainty. The Dunning-Kruger fast talkers win because they never show doubt. So why would expressing uncertainty make you look smart?
Because it depends on the sophistication of your audience. Blind overconfidence works brilliantly on novices. But if you are dealing with experienced professionals, total certainty actually triggers their alarm bells. By actively acknowledging the limitations of your own argument, by saying things like, based on the available data, or a potential failure point here might be, you signal depth.
You signal that your mind is open and actively evaluating real-time variables. You're immune to your own bias.
Precisely. Uncalibrated confidence is fragile. One bad data point shatters it. Calibrated uncertainty is robust. It proves you have already done the risk assessment.
I love that. Uncalibrated confidence is fragile.
Yes. And the final strategy, number 5, is the most physical manifestation of this kind of control. Slow down your thinking.
The deliberate pause. We live in a corporate culture that treats speed as the ultimate metric of intelligence. Like whoever unmutes their microphone fastest on the Zoom call must be the sharpest person in the room.
We really do. But cognitive science, specifically the work of Daniel Kahneman, tells a completely different story.
Right, Kahneman's framework of fast versus slow thinking.
Yes. Fast thinking is intuitive, automatic, and highly susceptible to bias. It is a knee-jerk reaction. Slow thinking is analytical, deliberate, and requires heavy cognitive lifting.
So when you are asked a complex question and you immediately launch into a rapid-fire answer, you are signaling to the room that you are relying on cheap, fast thinking.
Exactly.
But if you take a moment, you hold eye contact, take a 3-second deliberate pause, and then deliver a concise answer, you physically demonstrate that you are engaging deep analytical reflection.
That pause commands immense authority. It tells the room that your words have weight and they are worth waiting for.
Okay, so a listener could take these 5 strategies: be brief, drop the thesaurus, ask diagnostic questions, calibrate your uncertainty, and use the deliberate pause and think, this is a great checklist. But why don't I just use ChatGPT to generate perfectly brief, perfectly calibrated, simple responses for all my emails?
Which brings us to the ultimate modern trap, the AI fast food illusion.
Yes, let's get into this because this part of the source material was fascinating.
On the surface, AI tools seem like the perfect shortcut. They can ingest a chaotic 50-page report and spit out a highly articulate, perfectly structured summary in seconds.
And they never use unnecessary complexity. They always sound perfectly calibrated.
Right. But the author points out the fatal flaw in that logic. Because these AI tools are completely ubiquitous, the outputs have become entirely standardized. Everyone has the exact same tool.
We're all using the same oracle.
Exactly. And we have to remember how these models actually function. An LLM is mathematically designed to predict the next most likely word based on its training data. By definition, it regresses to the mean. It produces the ultimate, most highly polished version of average thought.
The author coined a brilliant term for this: artificial certainty. You get these responses that sound incredibly coherent, but they are generic. They lack any true differentiation.
Yes.
I love the author's analogy here. They compare Gen AI to a microwave for ideas. It's the fast food industry of thought. Synthetic, tasty, cheap, addictive, but, not actually nutritious.
That's a perfect way to look at it. If we connect this to the bigger picture, relying on AI generic templates can actually backfire and signal a lack of originality.
Right. If we're all just microwaving the same ideas, how does the listener actually stand out in a sea of algorithmic averages?
The real differentiator isn't access to AI. It's how you interpret, challenge, and build on its outputs. The premium has completely shifted from merely having answers to exercising judgment backed by real, messy experience.
Because AI cannot provide idiosyncratic interpretation.
Yeah.
It can't challenge an assumption based on like a weird anomaly you noticed on a factory floor 3 years ago.
Exactly. If you want to appear truly intelligent in the AI era, you don't compete on generating articulate summaries. You compete on asking the diagnostic question that the AI didn't have the contextual awareness to generate.
Wow. So what does this all mean? Bringing this all back to your daily life. If we pull all these threads together, the hypocrisy of how we view intelligence, the biological spam filters, the signaling mechanics, the AI homogenization, the author leaves us with what they call the final irony.
It is a profound irony. We are social evaluators navigating a world where perception doesn't just influence reality. Perception substitutes for reality.
Yeah.
If we fail to recognize true intelligence, we risk building institutions that reward the appearance of competence over the real thing. And in a complex world, that is the most unintelligent outcome of all.
Which means, for you listening to this right now, you have just acquired a dual superpower. First, you have the defensive architecture to protect yourself. The next time someone is speaking rapidly, using massive words, and projecting absolute certainty, your brain won't automatically flag them as a genius.
You'll see right through it.
Exactly. You will recognize it as a cheap biological hack. And second, you have the tactical toolkit to ensure that your own genuine intelligence doesn't get overlooked.
And you have to use that toolkit intentionally.
Absolutely.
I think there is one final provocative thought we should leave the listener to mull over, building on this whole idea of false certainty.
Lay it on us.
We know human nature naturally filters for people who sound completely certain, and it penalizes the truly brilliant people who are careful and nuanced.
Right.
It begs the question, how many massive corporate collapses or catastrophic historical blunders were simply the result of a room full of people falling for the loudest, most confident voice?
All while the actual smartest person in the room was simply too busy double-checking their facts to be heard over the noise.
Exactly. What rooms are you sitting in right now where the quietest person actually holds the answer?
That is such a powerful thought to end on. Keep analyzing the signals, pay attention to the quiet experts, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.